we have our first real Hoyoverse SHF. Not counting the oversized Paimon that Bandai decided was the Genshin character that people were most clamouring for some reason. Accidentally releasing at almost the perfect time, right before they got a massive buff with the Dahlia, we have S.A.M, the mecha-like genetically engineered super warrior from Hoyoverse's turn-based live service RPG Honkai Star Rail. It seems virtually impossible to get now, so here's hoping it's sold well enough that we get a lot more out of this line. Thankfully, they have already announced something else at least, and quite an unusual choice too with the Flame Reaver. But great, because it's one I was actually planning to make a custom figure of, which just proves the demand does exist out there for this line, because people have been making customs for ages of loads of characters, including of this. I was actually going to make one myself as well, using the Cowren Gunpla kit. And I actually still might. Let's get the flaws out of the way first. First of all is the colour. It's fantastically executed, all of the detail is separated, the paint stays in the lines perfectly, and it's nicely finished with both metallic gloss and matte for the underlying black. On the inner thigh, there are some splotches, and spread throughout are some mould lines that are a bit unsightly, mostly on the biceps. But that's fine though. What I'm not a fan of is the actual choice of colour. I don't know how the in-game model of this character looks to you, but to me it's some form of white, whereas this is full-on silver. That might be how the game designers intended it to look, but with the anime style, I don't think it's how most people see it. Those fan-made customs, for example, were never painted silver, and every cosplay I've seen is white. The official promo images for the figure hide this a bit too, which I think is actually maybe the silver lining. I don't think they did it deliberately, it's just that under heavy light, the silver can shine so much that it looks more white and accurate. The other flaw, in my opinion, is the size. It's pretty much exactly as you would expect from SHF, just a little bit taller than usual, as they are supposed to be a tall character, but it is, as expected with SHF, a little under scale and skewed toward the centre. SHF pretty much always makes the large characters a little bit smaller and the small characters a little bit larger, but I think this time it's a little bit too much. I would prefer it to be not just a little bit taller, but thicker. It feels a little insubstantial and fragile in hand, with the thin limbs and small, sharp details. With the skirts and everything, it also looks a little too wide at the hips. But it also might just be me, because I'm interested in making some customs myself, and all of the good base bodies that have been coming out for a while now are a little bit large, making me worry that this will look a little bit small next to them. Both problems are personal taste, and not even particularly Bandai's fault or anything really. The colour is fair enough. It is supposed to be metal armour that I think Hoyo intended to be silver. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if it was Hoyo that said it needed to be silver and not white. And the size, like I said, is par for the course, and it is bigger than other SHF, like it is supposed to be. Even in the case of customs, it should be easy enough to hide with the wonderful stand and effect parts for the complete combustion mode. The top of the shoulders can open up, revealing some nice gold radiator-like detail, and on there you can attach the first set of fire effects. The instructions tell you to actually fully remove that silver hatch while you plug in the fire, but it's not really necessary. The fire can still go and fit in fine with it still attached. although it is a bit tight, so you might still want to just remove it anyway to be safe. Then below that, at the bottom of the shoulders, you can attach the second effects. They just go into this exposed plug hole, and it's keyed to make sure you put them in the right way around. The fire goes in quite tightly, but because of the design of the shoulders and the flap underneath, when you actually go to move the figure, they can work themselves out and fall off. The hole itself is also just a bit unsightly. I guess the justification is that it's on the bottom, underneath the shoulders, so you shouldn't see it. But the shoulders don't rotate independently from the arms at all, so if you raise them, then it does become visible. I'm mentioning it because on the back, for the large fire cape, it has alternate parts for the effects so that there isn't always a hole in the back of the shoulders. So it's a bit strange that they've gone to the effort of hiding it here, on the back, but not underneath. The cape has a hinge as well as being able to swivel in the peg hole so that you can pose it without much issue. In the back of the head there's another much more hidden hole where you can just plug in the ponytail, and the connection just serves as a ball joint so that you can also move this around a little bit. Lastly, you can remove the antennas on the head in order to put parts on for a more closed mask look. The overall finished transformation looks awesome and really stands out and leaves an impression. Besides the stand and effects, the figure of course comes with swords for this mode and alternate hands to use them. The other hands are very tight and difficult to put on the figure though. I wish more companies would have the little plastic racks for holding the hands, because it really does a good job of keeping the hole in the plastic open and usable. Here you'll pretty much definitely have to heat them up in order to comfortably get them onto the wrists. The swords are similarly awkward. The pommel isn't separate, so you just have to force them into the gripping hands, and it is a tight fit. Probably best to heat them too, so that you don't have to worry about scratching the nice painted details. The pommel actually has different detail on both sides, and the blade itself is completely transparent with the pattern printed or painted on top. They look great and really complete the look of the mode. The only thing it's missing are the moving and opening flaps that are supposed to be all over the place. It's understandable that they aren't all here, but it would have been nice to have some of them. For example, the butt flap is all just one piece. I'd have preferred if it was separated more like it is in-game. I would also have liked if the calves still opened like they're supposed to. Maybe even with an effect part for it. Speaking of that actually, it's unfortunate that we don't get a red fire effect for the chest either. They've instead pretty much gone all in on the combustion mode. Otherwise, the figure moves well. Some exceptional parts, some a little lackluster. The head looks up, but not very far. Much better down, able to fully bury the chin. Fantastic side to side, enough to kind of be annoying actually, because it's easy for the head to become a bit off-centre. Like I also said, the shoulders don't rotate independently, they're attached to the arms with quite a complicated feeling joint. They rotate up and down, but also can pull upwards away from the arm, and I don't really even know how to describe it very well, I'll just have to show you. It's good that they do move so much though, because otherwise the arms can get a bit gappy. But most of the time you can eventually use the shoulders and push them in order to get them to close that gap and look more flush. The gap is because the arms are attached into the body on a ball joint that swings out to allow some butterfly motion. Unfortunately not very much though. It doesn't really let the arms come across the chest much at all, which is unfortunate for a sword wielding character. With the shoulders and everything, I can only get the arms to come up to about 90 degrees, or just a little bit past that. Bicep swivels, but can initially feel limited. It does swivel fully, but you have to move the shoulders out of the way a bit, because otherwise it kind of catches on to the biceps. just because of the shape of them. Elbows are also a bit more limited than usual. They only really get just a little bit past 90, because there's just not really enough of a cutout for them to go any further. The body does actually have 2 joints. I've no idea why though, because the top one does nothing. The bottom one works decently though, giving you a little bit of range in every direction as well as your rotation. Legs come forward about 45 degrees before they start having to kick out thanks to the crotch design. They then get just slightly short of 90 once you do kick them out a little bit. Backwards only gets the 45 thanks to the non-premium butt flap. Splits are great but not quite full 90 degrees. Fantastic inward motion though. Excellent for poses on the stand and walking poses and everything like that. I think that might either be why the hips are so wide to allow that range, but that would be very unusual, so I think it's more probably the other way about, and the fact that the hips are a bit wide just happens to give it more range here. The thigh swivel is also very good, lots of range while being completely hidden. Knees are thankfully unlike the elbows and go all the way for a full bend. Then the ankles are also great, all the way forward, and even with all of that range at the ankle, we still get a toe joint, and a very tight and sturdy and should be effective one at that as well. Good backwards range, except you can actually also move the heel, allowing it to go even further. Side to side felt tight at first, but also gets great range. Very well done considering that these are basically high heels which don't usually leave room for a peg to go forward and allow much natural pivot. So here they've gotten around that and given it still such great range by instead using a hinge, allowing them to give it this full bend. Overall, the articulation is kind of split down the middle. The lower half is great. Basically 0 complaints, and actually exceptional in several areas. The body though is still good, but much more limited in comparison. I'm annoyed though that it is so hard to get now, because to be honest I would actually quite like a second one, or even more. One for combustion mode and one for standard. Although the switch between the 2 modes is far easier than I expected, so I don't really feel as much desire for a second one anymore, thanks to that. Maybe if it did also come with some red fire. But the head and legs I could also use for some customs, and more than anything I'd like to paint one white instead of silver to see how it would look and if it is more accurate to my own mind's eye of S.A.M. But I would really want a second one for that because it is really nice and properly shiny. The silver they've used does look really good in its own right. The upside though is if it's hard to get, then there is clearly the demand for it, so hopefully we get more. Thank you very much for watching. I also actually have another channel where I've been yapping about Star Rail in general too, if you'd like to check that out and see what's been going on with it recently. Until next time, bye.